Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Chapter 1 and Beyond. I'm Christina, and today's episode is all about fantasy books. So, some fantasy books that have been staring down on my shelf for quite some time, while others, I just couldn't resist picking them up because of BookTube. Thanks, guys. Anyways, today's episode is going to be all about three books that I wanted to talk about from my fantasy shelf, and I do have a major confession to admit to. I realized out of all the books that I physically have on my TBR, many of them are fantasy books, and some of them are real thick, like thick books, like over thousands of pages. So I have a problem with hoarding fantasy books and then not getting to them. Um, and same goes for sci-fi books too. But to stay on topic, because I'm trying very hard to come up with a good structure for these podcasts, and I hope that more and more people will listen to these and get something out of it. But never ado, I really do feel that many of these books stay on my shelf because of the size of the book and how intimidating some of the content is, because I have Stormlight Archive series, I have the Priory of the Orange Tree, I have the Crescent City series, I have Thorn of Glass series, I have the Wheel of Time series, which I haven't even started on, and I have, so many more series. Like, I think I have at least 6 or 7 series that I'm looking at from my shelf right now, and I haven't even touched them. And I think, like, once I get into a series, I have to finish it. So I think that's why, like, I've been so invested in the ACOTAR series. And I know everyone talks about ACOTAR. I know that, it's a huge hype. Everyone talks about it. And, it's literally beaten into everyone's brain that, oh my God, you got to really read this series. And I really, for that reason, put off the ACOTAR series because of how hyped it was. But I have to, be honest with you guys. I never thought in a million years of a book being this hyped. It actually lives up to the hype, because the biggest thing that I look in fantasy books for is how they build the world, how the characters like interact with one another, how the politics and the fighting are. And this book series has everything I ever want in a series. Now, is the romance, like they call it romantasy, is the romance necessary? I don't think it is, but it really does help with understanding the raw emotion and the intention and the, just the overall between these characters. And does it need to be detailed romance? I think it's just over the top, but some to each their own. Need that kind of spice level, I guess is what they like to call it in their fantasy books. I personally don't. I'm personally reading the series because I really love the different courts that they have, the different realms of courts and the people that are within it. I really love the magic system within each of these courts. Like, I think it's very unique, and I love where the story's going at this point. I had literally just finished up book 3. I understand that there's like a novella, a Court of Starlight or something like that, and then a Court of Silver Flames is the final one that I have right now. But I'm very bummed out because I found out that she's writing yet another book for this series. So I feel like it's going to be a never-ending series, which I do appreciate from Sarah J. Maas, because she just continues to deliver on this world. And It kind of gave me the same vibes as like when the whole Harry Potter series came out and like the build up to that final book. And I feel like it's very much the same, but it's intended for like adults and adult fantasy, and like they keep saying, it's romantasy. So I personally am more of like a high fantasy booky girl. I have read like books like um Lord of the Rings. I've read books that are like um The Hobbit, and like classic fantasy with like the dragons. And I've actually have been wanting to pick up Aragon with my kids. I've read the Chronicles of Narnia, so to kind of give you like that perspective, those are the types of books that I usually read when it comes to fantasy. However, as I've matured over time and have really um, broadened my reading journey, I have really found myself picking up like books like magical realism, which I mean, I guess technically wouldn't be considered fantasy, but to me it's fantasy. To me it just like gives that whimsical feeling, if you will. And then like the high fantasy and the urban fantasy, like there's just so many of these subgenres, and I really appreciate where this genre has been taken, just because of the fact that there's just a variety for everybody. um but the first book that I really want to mention that I've recently have been absolutely entranced with is the Water Moon book. It's called Water Moon by Samantha Soto Yambo, and it's not technically a fantasy book, but it's considered a magical realism. And oh my gosh, this book has blown me away with like everything. And you really need to experience it yourself. Like if you have never really experienced loss or grief, or like the knowingness of like whether you're good enough, or whether like you live with these past regrets and you just have to keep moving forward, this book really is for you on that front. And I have to say that this has really helped me a lot recently. I had a family member pass recently, and it's been really hard because like there's a lot of things that happen in life, and you just don't realize like how much you get engrossed with that life path. And you know there's just like a powerful message within this book, and I'm only 200 pages in. I think I have about like 75, 78-ish pages left. That's not front and back, that's just physical pages. But so far I'm just loving it. I absolutely love it. It's very raw and emotional. It really has helped me a lot during this transition period of having the loss of my family member, and just trying to get back into a routine. But it really draws in like the message of this pawn shop, and this pawn shop actually takes past regrets from people. The people can pawn off their regrets or like previous life choices that weigh them down. And I thought that was really unique. That was really something unique and new. And I cannot get over on how beautiful this book is. Like I thought The Midnight Library by Matt Haig was good, but this one takes it to a whole other level. Um and I mean, like some of the quotes that I pulled for you guys will kind of give you like a sense of why I think this, and maybe you think so too. But this was released in 2025. It is a newer book. Samantha Sotoyambo, I hope I'm pronouncing her last name right. It's Yambao. But like at first I thought it was Japanese culture. I found out it's actually Philippines and such culture, which I find really fascinating. I always want to learn about new cultures, and this book like really brings in that history and like rich culture into the book. And the main character, Hannah, she is trying to go on this path and journey to help with her father's pawn shop, and her father decides that he wants to turn over the keys and give her ownership of the pawn shop. And she's been learning all along, she knew that her mom had made a very wrong decision, and she's had to live with not knowing her mom this whole time. And as the story unfolds, like there's just this beautiful journey, and you go through these different realms of her world, and it's just so stinking cool. Like it's really helped me appreciate, like, looking even at my life journey, and like understanding that, you know, you could kind of view your world in so many different ways and different perspectives, and it's just magical, the journey that you take yourself on. One of the quotes that I really, really loved throughout this book, and like I said, I'm still not finished with it, but the quote was, "Losing your way is oftentimes the only way to find something you did, not knowing you were looking for it." And that just blew me away, because of the fact that I've had the same thing. Like, I didn't realize I was on the wrong path, and realizing that this journey that you're on actually takes you to where you ultimately feel like you needed to be able to fulfill that portion of your life. And just being able to find something in the unknown of this lost path, and learning new things, and that's just what I really appreciate about this book. Another quote from Watermoon was, "Happiness does not exist in a place. It lives in every breath we take. You need to choose to take it in over and over again." And that really resonated with me too, because you know, we like try, like, as a society, like, I've realized that many take happiness as, oh, it's like what you do with your family, and like happiness can be summed from your accomplishments. And it's like no one really gives themselves credit for, like, the journey that they get to that point, like to that accomplishment. They don't look at the very, like, minimal steps. And I can really relate to that, because I personally am always looking at the next milestone, or the next, like, big thing that I'm working on. And kind of like this podcast, like, I never thought in a million years that I would be picking up a microphone and sharing all of this with you. But at the same time too, I love what this is doing for me, because, like, I'm really looking at a deeper meaning to the books that I'm reading. And I'm so glad that I did pick this one up, because it really was the right time for me to begin reading this book, based off of losing my family member, and going through that grief, and going through all this transition of getting myself back on my feet and just keeping going. So if you have ever read Watermoon, or have wanted to read Watermoon, I personally feel that it is a right place, right time type book to read. It is magical. It is whimsical. I personally am obsessed with it. And I plan to give, like, a full review of this book once I'm fully done with it. It'll probably be in my June wrap up. Some of the bonus episodes that I've been working on are, like, mainly just deeper reviews and wrap ups. So just stay tuned for that on this podcast. But definitely recommend Watermoon by Samantha Soto Yambo, and honestly, it checks everything off. So this one, like, I had to pick it up as soon as I saw the cover, and as soon as I got it from Book of the Month, I just absolutely had to have this book in my hands. And I knew that when my family started relaying that the family member was really starting to go down this path of being in the final moments, I knew that something like Watermoon was something that I needed to kind of escape from the emotion I was feeling and everything like that. So, um, hopefully this section of the podcast will influence you to read it as well. Um, so the second book that I want to mention, I know I briefly mentioned Akatar series. Um, I will get back to that in a moment, but the next one I want to mention is The Way of Kings. This one is by Brandon Sanderson. It is the beefiest book that is likely on my TBR. Um, among maybe like The Priory of the Orange Tree or yeah, I think that in the Crescent City series by Sarah J. Maas. I do have a Joe Abercrombie series too, but that one doesn't look as thick. I'm gonna be honest. I think honestly between the Stormlight Archive and the Priory of the Orange Tree, I think those are neck and neck with the largest ones that are on my shelf right now. But I will admit, like, the size of these books is what really has intimidated me from being able to start. And the only reason why I started was because I needed something that made me feel like it was Lord of the Rings, but on a whole other level. And the Way of Kings has really, really, truly gotten me into loving high fantasy again. And it's been a long, long time since I've dove deep into a high fantasy book. Just because it's just so content rich and it's like, it really is intimidating. I think like this book is like, I want to say it's probably like over 1,500 pages, maybe more, maybe less than that. Regardless, it's going to take me a long, long time to get through this book. But I can appreciate it because like I love the characters. We are in the Kashmir, and Kashmir. I don't know how to pronounce this stuff, so please bear with me. And Brandon Sanderson, like if he ever listens to this, I'm sorry for botching up your magical world because you are like absolutely amazing. Anyways, but we follow several different characters, and I at first needed to really adjust to how it was bouncing around between um Kaladin and oh, what was the other person's name? I think it was let me look it up. I need to look this up, otherwise it's gonna drive me crazy. Okay. Yeah. Kaladin Stormblessed, Dalinar Colin, and Shallan Daver are the main characters that I've been introduced to so far. And the setting is in Rocher. I'm not sure. And I was wrong. It is over 1,000 pages, not 1,500 pages. So I'm being over exaggerating on that. But what I've read so far is exactly what I look for in a high fantasy book, because we open up with Kaladin like in this major epic battle, and it is just gruesome, grotesque, like everything that you could imagine happening in a war setting. It is in there, and he's very detailed about it. I just love the gore and the blood, and it's weird, but like you get that raw emotion behind like this setting of the area and the environment. So, but yeah, and then like we dive into Dalinar's story, and I believe Shallan's story. So there's like this region of just pure war in Kaladin being, this unfortunate slave that has to do all this battle bidding for these individuals. And then I believe Dalinar is the other character that like think it was like a merchant or something like that. I'd have to double check. But I know that there's another region too where it's like kind of like in this desert. very vast area, and I really loved like the ability of seeing like the world as it's being introduced through these characters. So I don't even think I'm a quarter way in with this book, but I'm going to be honest with you, like just everything, like the storytelling and the way that it's written, and unfortunately the chapters are a lot longer than compared to Watermoon, but I can appreciate it because it's really it's very immersive and I really love it a lot. So I know for a fact this is probably going to take me quite some time to finish up, just because of the fact that it is a beefy book. And I'm looking at Words of Radiance, which is the second book in the Stormlight Archive series. I'm looking at Oathbringer, which is the third one. And they just keep getting thicker and thicker. But I'm very eager to find out like more about this world and more about the characters. I think like the biggest thing that really prevented me from initially picking this up was that I was very much into trying to get through my smaller books first. And a lot of them were like a mix of sci-fi and fantasy. I believe this particular book is considered a sci-fi fantasy, which, interesting enough, I'm just now diving into that genre because I love and appreciate all the things that come with sci-fi, but I can also love and appreciate the things that come with fantasy as well. Each really drive, a bigger cause and bigger purpose. And yeah, I mean, I love it. I definitely would love to interact with anybody that has read this series, just because I'm really curious on what your thoughts are of each of these characters, like as they're getting introduced. I've heard Game of Thrones kind of does this as well. I've only seen the Game of Thrones series. I have not read the books, and I am very disappointed in myself that I found out after the fact, but I was so into that series that I just could not you know, put it off. So, but I've been hearing a lot about how like it's kind of introduced in similar ways, and I can appreciate his writing style and the amount of like thought provoking that goes into each of these characters in these different regions and the magic system. It's just everything. Like I definitely, if you're looking for something to really get into an epic like saga and really dive deep into a different world and different politics and all that, I definitely recommend the Stormlight Archive series. Um, I'd have to say that this one, Stormlight Archive series, has not been on my shelf the longest. I would definitely say the Akatar series and the Throne of Glass series have been on my shelf the longest, because that was like the first two series that I got introduced to when I started looking at BookTube and everything else. But yeah, I mean, I know that the first book of Stormlight Archive was published in 2010, so I'm definitely behind on a lot of these like fantasy series, if you will. Um, the last book I want to mention, and I have already gone through and read it, so I can give you like my full like feelings on it. But the Akatar series, specifically A Court of Wings and Ruin, which is the third in the series. A lot of people talk about like the second book, and then talk about like how the third book gets to be a little drawn out and everything. I personally love the third book. The Court of Wings and Ruin was more of like the battle and the politics and like the build up, if you will. And if you haven't read the Akatar series, like I personally had avoided the Akatar series because of how hyped it was. I personally resisted it just because like everyone talks about it, everybody reads about it, and I just feel like sometimes with these overhyped books, like I get very, very disappointed quickly, knowing that, you know, everyone's kind of reading it because like so and so said this, and like a lot of people go into this ACOTAR series because of like people mentioning the spice level. And honestly, for me, when it comes to fantasy books, I look at the world building, like I mentioned, I look at the characters. I really don't give a rat's rear end about the romance. Like I hate romance books, for the record. So my first impression, like when I first heard about the ACOTAR series, was like, okay, yeah, everyone just wants this glorified romance series, and I wouldn't even put it past if it's the worst thing possible. Like, I went in thinking exactly that. But then after I read book one, and then when I read book two, I was like, okay, I'm very invested. I really want to find out, because the way that Sarah J. Maas like talks about the world building and then the character arcs, like everyone that the different realms and the different courts that are involved, like I love it, love it, love it, and it's overhyped for a reason. Like there's a lot of people that talk about the spice, like I mentioned, but I personally am going to talk to you about like the world itself. If I could travel to any of the courts, I would definitely say I want to live in Valeris. I want to live in the Night Court. I want to just stay there forever. Like everything about the atmosphere and everything that was described, I personally was like, oh my gosh, I want more of this. So, um, and like the different people and the different, courts and their unique magic system. Oh my gosh, pure perfection, chef's kiss. I personally am glad that I have picked this up, and I was peer pressured by my friend to read this series, by the way. Kristen, if you're listening to this, thanks, girl. She constantly kept badgering me. You need to read this book. You need to read this book. But and then like I get really I crack up with like some of the Facebook groups that I'm in, because like a lot of people start off like exactly how I did. I went down this pattern of like, oh, Tamlin's cool. But then I was like, no, I don't like Tamlin anymore. But it was really interesting on how like my journey with like Reese and Azrael and Cassian and all the different characters, like I just ate it up, and I absolutely am obsessed with them, and I wish I could be their friend, to be quite honest. I personally wish I could like see them in real life, just because like their personalities, not just like the description physically of that character. It's more of their like personality for me. Their personality and their loyalty and commitment to helping Reese and helping their court, and just being loyal as like a family, so to speak, even though they are you know they're not related in any way, shape, or form. But some of the quotes that I wanted to like mention to you guys, and I think like honestly it's what really kept me going through this particular one out of the whole series, was one of the quotes was, what we think to be our greatest weakness can sometimes be our greatest strength. And that really, that, and remember that you are a wolf, you cannot be caged. Like she really finds her footing in what she's good at and what she embraces, and you really dive into her journey of realizing how powerful and how much she is a contributor to this war and to all of the things that are happening with the Night Court, and how she came to be, um, a high lady of the Night Court. So, um, honestly, I think every single spoiler has ever been revealed, and I still, even with seeing some of the spoilers that are out there, I still 1,000% agree that people need to read this book in this series. So, the last topic that I wanted to talk about in this episode is fantasy tropes. Do I love them? Do I hate them? What even is a trope? I know that that gets thrown around a lot now that we talk about fantasy books. And I mean, the definition of a trope is a common storytelling device, theme, or character type that appears across many books, movies, or genres. Think of it like a pattern. It's not good or bad on its own, but how it's used can make a story feel fresh or predictable. In fantasy, tropes help set reader expectations and create familiar story beats. Some are timeless and comforting, while others feel overdone. And I agree. I 100% agree, because like you look at the trope, the chosen one. You got Harry Potter in that mix. You got um Chronicles of Narnia with the kids. You got the other trope, found family, a group of misfits. You know, uh, you can really like talk about Azriel and Cassian and Rysand and from the Akatar series in that situation, and how like they all are a supportive family, but they're just like a group of individuals that just don't relate to one another. um Magical school, young heroes attend a magical academy. I have not personally read A Deadly Education, and I've also not read Ordinary Monsters, but I hear that that's within that trope. I don't know. um Another trope that I knew about but didn't really know like it had context was a quest or journey. So like think of The Hobbit. Characters travel across land to fulfill a goal. You're trying to return the ring and destroy it. So um but yeah, I mean, honestly for me, like I don't favor one or the other. I'm more of like, hey, if you can build me this escape world and you can give me a good freaking book with like all of the plot and all of like the amazing characters, I don't care what trope you use. Um so for me, like I don't really care like what trope it like kind of comes down to. It's more of like, I personally love being put into someone else's perspective and learning about the world as it is presented in front of me, and how that character develops throughout to get to their end journey, so yeah. So if there was any fantasy books that I have mentioned on here, which again, we talked about Watermoon, we talked about the A Court of Wings and Ruin, we talked about the we talked about another one. Yeah, see, I'm already forgetting. Talking about Priory of the Orange Tree, talking about Stormlight Archive, talking about Watermoon. But yeah, I mean, like honestly, I'm really curious on what you guys are putting off, like when it comes to fantasy books. Like which books are you finally getting into or you want to start, but what is driving you from hesitating on starting them? I really want to know. Feel free to join on my Discord channel. I would love to interact with you. But until next time, I appreciate you all. You guys have been absolutely amazing with me getting started with this project. I know that the first couple of episodes were really rocky, but I promise I am working very, very hard to get a structure. But until next time, I will talk to you guys later. Bye.